In bringing the rugged Toyota Prado-sized GX to Australia for the first time, Lexus has solved one big problem, but it's left another issue on the table to fix later. Good news first, releasing the GX shows Lexus has discovered its charisma. Just look at the thing. The styling is unashamedly square, muscular and confident, and yet somehow not alarmingly aggressive in execution like so many large vehicles. The Lexus GX is obviously cool. It doesn't need to shout about it. While the 250 series is the first all-new Prado in 15 years, this is the first time the Lexus GX, an equally big but more luxurious large off-road SUV, has been made available in Australia. It has previously only been produced in left-hand drive guise. The third-generation GX is based on the same TNGAF ladder frame platform that underpins not only the 250 series, but the Toyota Land Cruiser 300 series wagon and the new Toyota Tundra pickup, plus the US market Sequoia and Tacoma, as well as the Lexus LX. Interior. Like the Prado, the GX550 Luxury has a boxy stance that's imposing and stands out from the crowd. But if anything, its more premium and contemporary exterior design exudes more road presence than the Toyota's retro styling. Thanks to the large side steps, which are conveniently illuminated at nighttime, and chunky grab handles, it's pretty easy to get into, especially for such a large wagon. Once you're inside, there are delicious-looking and feeling Nulux upholstered seats that are beautifully supportive. This is the kind of seat you could easily sink into for a long road trip. Both the front seats offer 8 ways of electric adjustment, including plenty of thigh support, which will be especially appreciated by taller folk. There's also 2-way lumbar support, which is good for those with crook backs like myself. Another great standard inclusion is heating and ventilation for the front seats. The automatic mode is also a clever touch and very Lexus. Ahead of the driver is a soft leather-wrapped steering wheel that's perfectly sized and feels nice in the hands. The electrical steering column adjustment feels pretty bougie, but ultimately the Ford Everest's manual system offers more tilt and reach adjustment. Instrument TFT. All the buttons on the steering wheel are easy to understand and have a satisfying click. At the end of the day, this is just a Lexus steering wheel, and it's very similar to what other models get. Thankfully, it doesn't have those absolutely stupid trackpads. Behind the steering wheel, the stalks for the indicator and wipers are super satisfying to use. They operate with a solid thunk that feels premium. As standard, there's a 12 3-inch digital instrument cluster that's very common among a number of current Lexus and Toyota models. It looks great and is high resolution. Plus, you can configure it with different information to your heart's content. While it is nice having a crisp digital instrument cluster, it's also great to have such a large head-up display as standard, and it's capable of projecting an array of information onto the windscreen. You can choose from 3 different views, ranging from minimal to full. Moving across, while you could easily mistake the GX for a Toyota based on the digital instrument cluster and head-up display alone, the central 14-inch touchscreen infotainment system is considerably larger than the one in the Prado. Screen. The big landscape-shaped screen is high resolution, and it's easy to swipe around the menus and click on icons, basically like an iPad. Thankfully, the menu system isn't overly convoluted, meaning you can't really get lost. While there is both wired and wireless forms of Apple CarPlay, Android Auto is only available with a cable to your phone. With my iPhone 15 Pro Max connected wirelessly, I did experience a few dropouts in known interference points, though it would typically reconnect with no issues. An annoying part of the larger touchscreen is that the climate control functions are built into it, and they're constantly shown on the bottom. But I do appreciate the 2 physical dials attached to the screen, which are used to adjust the temperature for the dual-zone climate control system. Looking around the cabin, it's rather blocky and also very wide. Like the Prados on which the Lexus GX has been historically based, there's so much space between the front 2 seats, which makes sense given its focus on the North American market. Performance. When you take off, you're acutely aware there's plenty of power on tap, and in typical everyday driving you barely scratch the surface of this engine's performance. It's super easy to modulate acceleration with the throttle, as it has a long travel, a lot like the Land Rover Defender. Around town and with lighter throttle application, the 10-speed automatic transmission will flick through the gears quickly to keep the revs low, which in turn minimizes fuel consumption. More on this later. Thankfully, there's oodles of torque on tap, so it doesn't have to constantly flick down gears to accelerate, though if you flex your right foot, it'll drop a number of gears to increase engine speed. When you do this, the engine makes a beautiful sound that oozes into the cabin in just the right amount. It's surprising just how quickly this vehicle moves for such a big wagon. It leans back and pulls hard, which is addictive and smile-inducing. You'll likely win every traffic light Grand Prix, though you'll pay for this heavily at the fuel bowser. The GX550 also requires a minimum of 95-octane premium unleaded petrol, which hurts the hip pocket even more. Not helping matters is the lack of an engine idle stop and start function, which makes urban fuel consumption super high. On average, I recorded a lofty 15 to 20 liter per 100 kilometers over a week of traveling to and from the office in the usual traffic with just myself and my backpack on board. Powerful and comfort. Out on the open road, this car really stretches its legs and settles into a comfortable groove. The transmission slots into top gear where the engine revs just above idle, and it'll sit there unless pushed. The fuel economy drops considerably at highway speeds too, but the relatively small 80-liter fuel tank limits its overlanding and touring potential. The fuel range readout on the digital instrument cluster showed around 400 kilometers with a full fuel tank, which is much less than the diesel Prado and also less than many EVs can travel on a full charge. That's really disappointing, because the GX feels like a properly premium overlander with a strong, commanding driving position and all the technology you'd need. If you're after long-distance travelability, you'd better look elsewhere unless you want to cart dirty and smelly fuel juries around with you. This time we didn't have the opportunity to test the GX off-road, but as standard it comes with selectable low-range gearing via a transfer case, as well as a locking center differential. You need to opt for the Overtrail variant if you want more off-road bells and whistles like a rear locking differential, among countless others.